Welcome guys, it's Justice again from tutorialscamp.com. We are still on the Java programming tutorials, right? We have come a long way and we have learned a lot. Now, today what I want us to learn is how to actually build a very basic Hello World application in Java, right? So we are going to write our application. So just navigate to your system and then open any text editor, either notepad++ or just notepad, right? So when you open it and then click here to create a new document, right? So when you have created a new document, click on file and then save it as, I'm actually saving it on my desktop. You can save it anywhere. Save it as tutorialscamp.java, right? Make sure you save it as tutorialscamp.java. You can actually save it as anything that you want, but make sure you add the extension .java to it, right? This will tell the compiler that, hey, this is a Java application, right? So I'm actually note the path that you are saving it on, because you're actually going to be using it. I'm saving mine on my desktop, right? So click on save and let's go now. So before you can create your Java application, right, what you should know is that in Java, every file must contain a class. Every file must contain at least one class, right? So what we are going to do is that we begin by creating a class first. So this our class, and then followed by the name of our class. So we say something as tutorials camp, right? So tutorials camp represent the name of our class, right? And we need to add this curly brace to it. The curly brace actually means that, hey, whatever code whatever block of code is going to be written in this curly braces represent the code that belongs to this class here, right? This class only. That the reason is that we can have multiple class. We can have two classes, right? One like this. Maybe we name it as YouTube. If we name this thing as YouTube, right? And we have a bunch of words like this and that and this and that, and we don't surround any of these guys with curly braces, right? How would the compiler know that this block of code actually belongs to this class, or this bunch of code, this code here belongs to this class, right? So that's the main reason behind the curly braces, right? You got it. So that's it. So when you have defined your class name, right, then you go ahead and then create a main method, right? Now in Java, at least in your Java application, there must be a one file that at least contain the main method, a class that contains the main method. That's what will be executed by the Java JVM, right? So this is what we do. Public, right? Public actually means that we are going to define a method, and that method can be accessed anywhere in our application. So public static actually means that, right, the method that we are going to define, it is going to our Java application does not need to create object of this class to access the static method, right? The method that we are going to define. It can actually run the method that you are going to define direct without creating an object of this class. So static and then void means here that our method that you are going to define, it is not going to return anything, right? It's not going to return anything. Then here is the name of our method. This is the name of our method, but Again, the curly braces, you know exactly what it means, just like what I just explained in this class. It also means that whatever code that you are going to define inside here belongs to what this method right here, right? But inside this class, we need to have some parameters into it, right? And the parameters you are going to have, they are called command line arguments. Okay, so when we are running our Java application, when we compile and run it, maybe there are some parameters that we want to pass into our application to do something with it, right? I will tell you what is command line argument later. I will show you how to go about it well, right? So what we do is that because we can pass many arguments into it without expecting a single value, we can it actually accept what an array of string, right? So and this is the argument. You can name this thing anything, right? It's just the name of my this thing of my command line argument, right? You can do this, name this thing by leaving it as arguments. Make it clear for you that there is a command line argument that you will be accepting in your application, right? So now we have gotten our main method here. Now what are we going to do inside our main method? We are actually going to print something on the what, on the console. So what you are going to do is we use this method, System.out.println, and then we pass in the string of the variable that, of the data that we want to print to the console. Here we simply want to execute hello world. Hello world. Is that the right spelling? I don't know. Alright, I think that's good. So now System.Hellooworld, this is actually an input output stream. Okay, it's an output stream that prints something out of your Java application what into the system, right? So I'll talk about our java.io output stream, and I'll show you when we get there. I'll show you what is meant. But here what you should know is actually that this guy is actually printing something into the console. If you are a JavaScript developer, you should think of this thing as what console.log, right? You know, you define something like this, right? Console.log, then you do hello world, right? Yeah. So this is exactly what this guy is actually doing, right? And if you are from PHP background, you know, you do something like echo, right? But it's not the same because PHP, it runs on the server, it prints something onto the console, but that it prints something onto the system screen, but not the console, right? But this guy, they print something onto the console. So this guy is different. But if for clever understand, you can just think of it that way. So that's exactly what is meant by System.out.println, right? So that's what you should know, right? Now, how is this method going to be called, right? This method, we are not the one who is going to be calling it. Our Java, there's something called JVM. I'll talk about the difference between Java runtime environment, JDK, and then JVM, right? But now, because I've not said anything about it, what you should know is that the JVM is responsible to what, calling this method, right? So when we will compile our application and we run it, the JVM will call this method, and whatever is inside this method, that's what JVM is going to execute. Now, so what we need to do is to compile this program and then run it on our system. So you remember what I said, right? If you want to compile our application in the previous I've said everything in the previous tutorial, right? You need to open your CMD, right? Your CMD, and then navigate to where you saved your file. It's on my desktop, so desktop, and then let me bring this program for you to see, right? So okay, let me make mine so you will see my files very large icons. Alright guys, so you can see I've gotten my Java file here, which is actually this one file right here, right? Now what I'm going to do now is to compile it, right? I need to compile it first. I want to run this Java code that I have written, right? So now if you are able to understand this and write it, you can actually call yourself someone who has a basic understanding of Java, right? Yeah. So you can you have actually developed Java application that can print hello world on the system, on your system. Now you need to compare it and then run it, right? Because once you have coded everything, doesn't mean your system will run it automatically. No, it needs to compare this thing. This is just an English language, so you need to convert it into a bytecode. That's what the machine will understand, and then what, run it, right? So let's compare it into a bytecode that our system will understand. So we do that with javac and then the name of our file, which is tutorialscamp.java. So tutorialscamp.java, it's comparing, right? So now you see it has compiled successfully, and look what just happened, right? This is the language. You see I have my original source file, which is this, right? Which is this, and immediately after I compile, I've gotten this. So all the code that is within here, this code, right, Java has compiled it into what, a bytecode here, right? So when I'm going to run my application, this system right here, right, it will not run this file. It's going to run this file because this is what it understands. This is just a plain Java syntax, which is kind of in an English form, right? But this is what the language this guy will understand, right? So this is what is going to run. It's not going to run this, right? So what I need to do is that I need to java and then the name of my file, tutorials camp. You can actually use, since you have the class name, you can actually leave it like this, right? Or since the class name is tutorials camp, you can actually leave it tutorials camp, right? And it will execute successfully, right? You have gotten hello world, right? If you don't like to, you can actually append the file name as java tutorialscamp.java, and it will do the same thing, right? It does the same thing, right? That's how actually it works. Now what just happened here is that when we immediately we hit this guy, right, the JVM will go into our application and look for the main method right here, right? Then when it go into the look for main method, it's check that, hey, is this guy passing some argument into his function? No, we are not passing any argument into this main method or function here, right? So it will just go ahead and then print something, do whatever is here. What we are doing is what, print something on the console, right? Now let me show you. Since you have understand how to print something on the command line, right? What we want to do now is to, let me show you what is meant by a command line argument and how you should accept it, right? So imagine we want to accept print some age on the system. We want to accept the age of the user when he is trying to compare our program. So we can do something like your age is right, your age is ages argument. This is an array, right? So we want to accept the first argument that the user will type, right? So when we compare application, whenever argument the user will type, we want to grab it, right? Let me run this thing and actually show you. Now since we have to make changes to our application, we need to recompile it again. So javac and then tutorials camp.java. Watch closely, right? You see it has not created a different file, right? But since this file is the same, it has modified it, right? Added some value text into it, right? So we need to run our application right here. We need to pass in the age of our application to grab it, right? So we can do javac and then tutorials camp, and then my age can do something like 23 and then invalid flag, right? So as far, all right. The reason is why I'm using javac, right? I need to use java. I'm running it and I'm using java. I need to use java. That's because when you are compiling, that's where you use java. So java tutorials camp 23, right? We got it. Your age is 23, which is exactly your age is what, 23. So this is exactly what this guy here means. I hope you have fully understand it. This really easy and it's nothing complicated. Later on I will show you how you can actually pass in many arguments into this and then grab it. It's just an array, you just need to look through it, right? I will show you how to do it, right? So one thing I want you to know is that when you are accepting a command line argument, right? When you are accepting a command line argument like this, when you are accepting something like this, when you are first compiling the application like tutorials javac, we use this javac to compile application, right? Like tutorials.java, right? Do not pass the command line argument when you are comparing it. Like my age is 23. This will cause an error, right? This time we are we are actually converting the code here into what, a byte code. Okay, we are converting it into a byte code, right? So you don't need to compare it here, pass the argument here, but rather when you are running the job, when you are running the file, this term as tutorials, I'll show you tutorials camp. Then this where you pass the argument into, right? So after the application has been compiled and then you are running it on your system, then you pass the argument into it, right? You need to understand it, right? So the key here is that we don't pass command line argument during what, compile time, but rather we pass command line argument during what, run time. Next video I will show you what is meant by compile time execution and then what, runtime execution. I'm really sure you have understand this very well, right? And what I want you to practice this, do it yourself, and then if you get into trouble, any difficulties, just let me know. Okay, so what is actually going here is that we have created our Java Hellooworld application. Just a quick brief. This is our Java application, right? This is our class. We have this angle here represents our Java application. We have our class here, right? We define it with this class keyword, right? And the public mean this class is public, right? Doing that, we didn't. You can actually leave it rather by doing when we are creating the class here. I didn't bring the public. I've explained everything in the last video, and you can grab it, right? So inside it, this is our main method, right? The public here makes this class what, accessible by our JVM, and since we are not returning it, we use a void, right? And then this is what we are printing onto the what, onto the system, right? Very basic to understand. Then when we want to compare it, this is what we need to do. You first what, compile that. When you want to run it, you first need to what, compile it with javac and then the name of our file, which will be tutorialscamp.java. So this will be tutorialscamp.java, and when you want to run it or execute it, you need to use the syntax java, then the name of a what, java file, which is tutorialscamp.java, or you can simply use the class name here, which is tutorials camp without adding the .java extension to it, and then you will be good to go. Okay, so guys, this is all about a simple hello world application in Java. It's really easy, and I'm very sure you have grabbed the full understanding, right? So see you in the next video. And what I want to talk about next is very important, right? What is meant by compile time and then runtime execution, right? It's very important, and you need to understand, right? So if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and then hit the bell button, so that whenever I upload video, you'll be the one to see it. Thank you for watching it, and then see you in the next video. Have a nice day.